Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 102. I am your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan. If you can't do it, nobody can. And this is the world's first podcast, fully, completely, 100% dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels around the world. Welcome to the podcast today, folks. Great to have you on board for episode 102. I love being in three digits. It's really fun to say 102 instead of 52 or 12 or 37 or 79. Anyway, good to have you on board today. The featured segment today is an interview with Russell and Ashlyn Brown. They are the owners of Port Townsend Watercraft in Port Townsend, Washington, who designs and builds small boats and sells small boat kits. So I would encourage you to stick around for the interview. We had a lot of fun. They both grew up in boating families and have done a lot of time on the water, which is pretty awesome. Well, I'll give you a little SCAMP update. I've been working frantically on the boat here. Got about 165 or 170 hours into it. $4,320. Since I recorded the last episode, I had to do a little steam bending, so I built a 16-foot steam box, and it came out pretty cool. What I did is I took a 4x8 sheet of OSB, and I cut it into 8 pieces that were 6 inches, just under 6 inches by 8 feet in length. And I made 2 4-foot boxes out of those 8 pieces. And then I used a piece of plywood, 2 pieces of plywood to join the 2 pieces together. I capped one end, put a rag on the other end, cut a hole in the bottom, put some dowels midway across the box so that it would hold my wood, and I had my steam box, so that was pretty cool. Hadn't made one that big before. So I had to steam the gunnels and the carlins for my SCAMP, and I was using Doug fir, which isn't the easiest stuff to steam because it's kiln dried, the stuff I had anyway, and theoretically you need green wood. Anyway, first thing I did was I pre-cut the 4 parts that I was going to steam, and I laid them out on a tarp in my driveway, put rags over them and wet them down and let them soak in some water for a couple days. Then I threw 2 in the steam box, a carlin and a gunnel for the port side of the boat. Cooked them for about 45 minutes and had my wife help me and clamp those to the hull of the boat where the gunnel goes, and then just below the gunnel I put the carlin. That worked well. I pulled the carlin off, let it dry overnight and kind of hold its position. But then I took the gunnel off and set it aside for a little bit, and it stiffened up on me. And when I got ready to glue it and clamp it back to the boat in position, I blew it out, which wasn't fun. It felt like a major setback. It was like, oh my goodness, I've got to stop building my boat now because I blew out a piece of Doug fir. But then I came to my senses and I thought, okay, I got to be a little more methodical about this. So what I did on the next gunnel, I had bought 2 extra pieces, fortunately, so I cut another one, soaked it, steamed it, and this one I clamped it in place, and then I would remove 1 clamp at a time and put a screw through the hole into the gunnel about every 6 to 8 inches, get it in the exact position. So I had it screwed along the full length of the boat and held in place overnight. Took all my clamps off. Then what I did is I took half the screws off the gunnel, peeled it back, put on my epoxy my thickened epoxy. Well, first I put on the straight epoxy, then the thickened stuff, then put it back up and put all the screws in, then pulled the other half of the gunnel off, epoxied it, put the screws back in, wiped it down, and I was good to go. So that was the methodology I used for both of the gunnels. And then for the carlins, which go inside the boat to support the deck, the length of the boat, those have little notches inside the boat, so I used clamps, and I've got these one-handed clamps, which are really awesome. They work really great, and I just bought some more on sale, so I had about a dozen or so of those, which is pretty awesome. So I use those instead of the C-clamps. They're much easier to handle, and I actually built a plank wrench, which was a 2x4 with a notch in it that fit my 1x2 carlin, so I could twist the carlin into place and then clamp the wrench so it would hold it in the correct position. And I did that in a couple places on the carlin and then glued it in place, let it dry overnight, took the clamps off. So I got both carlins, both gunnels in the boat, on the boat. And next step is, and actually what I did too was I sanded all the areas forward of bulkhead 3, which is a forward stowage area, which is open from the top right now. I sanded it all down and put a couple coats of paint on it. I got to put one more coat on because once you put the top on the boat, especially for that storage area ahead of bulkhead 3, it's pretty difficult to get in there and do any painting. So I'm going to get that nicely painted up. Next step is to put the deck on. And then I got to roll the boat over this weekend and glass the bottom, epoxy all the planks, and put some fillets in the bottoms of the planks where they lap over. And then I'm going to throw around the trailer and take it to Port Townsend for the Wooden Boat Festival. So won't have it quite as far along as I had hoped by the festival. I had hoped to have it fully assembled and built, but I'll be about 80 to 85% there, so that's good enough. So that is the SCAMP update for this week. Still having fun as usual. Check out my website, hookedonwoodenboats.com/SCAMP for the latest updates and all that kind of stuff. You may or may not know that I published my first ebook on August 15th, titled Get in the Wooden Boat Game, A Guide for Building Your First Boat. 38 pages long. It's got a lot of pictures and links and fun stuff. It's an electronic book, so it's a PDF file. The book costs $4.99, but right now through September 9th, if you subscribe to my free monthly newsletter, you can get the book for free. To subscribe, you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. Give me your first and last name and your email address, and you're good to go. Once you do that, you'll get an email from me, and I'll give you the instructions on how to download the book. In the back of the book, there's links and resources there for tools and supplies, kit manufacturers, and all that kind of stuff. On the tool and supply section, if you click on those links, it'll take you to places like Amazon where you can buy tools. If you do make those purchases, I make a small commission, and I appreciate anything you would do there. Thank you in advance for that. So in the last week, I've had 26 new subscribers, which is pretty awesome. I'm approaching 500 subscribers, which is really cool. I'm excited about that. And I know this book promotion has really helped inspire, encourage, and facilitate people subscribing to my monthly newsletter. So that's pretty awesome. Well, on September 6th is the official start of the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival in Port Townsend, Washington. I will be arriving there on the 5th with my SCAMP and my canoe, which I'm going to have on display, both of those at the festival. I'm also teaching 2 classes. These classes are titled Build Your First Wooden Boat. They're going to be based on my book. So at noon on Friday and at 1:15 on Saturday for an hour, I'll be teaching that in the Explorer Room in the Northwest Maritime Center. Please come by and check it out if you can. And if I haven't met you before, you can find me down on the Commons near the boats that I bring part of the time. Or you can just call me on my cell phone, 425-319-7800. And glad to hook up with you and talk shop and have some fun. And like I say, I'm heading over there on the 5th, which is a Thursday, and I've got a lot to do between now and then. So next week there will be no podcast, which is the first time I've not done a podcast each week since I started in September of 2011. But that's okay. It's just I got too much going, so I'm taking next week off. So episode number 103 will happen the following week on September 12th, I think it is, that Thursday. So stay tuned and come on back then. There'll be a podcast this week, obviously, and then I'll skip next week and then September 12th. So, okay, we're going to move on to the interview with Russell and Ashlyn, Port Townsend Watercraft. Take it away, Russell and Ashlyn. Okay, it's July 20th, 2013. I'm sitting with Ashlyn and Russell Brown from Port Townsend. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
We're sitting at a picnic table here at the Maritime Center right by the water during the Pocket Yacht Palooza, the second annual Palooza, which is pretty cool. Lots of fun boats here. And you guys, did you bring a boat here today?
Yeah, we have our PT-11.
PT-11, nesting dinghy. Very cool, very cool. Well, let's start with a little personal history. Maybe, Ashlyn, you want to go first? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I went to art school, so
Okay.
I thought I'd be an artist. I ended up in fashion for a while, and traveling. Always traveled a lot, and ended up on boats for the last 20 plus years. So,
Where did you grow up, or where were you raised?
Virginia originally, and then in the Virgin Islands.
Really? Virgin Islands? I'm a little jealous about that part.
It got too cold in Virginia, so my mom packed us up and
Really?
we headed south.
Moved you down there?
Yeah.
Wow. Was there work down there?
At that time, was more work in the Virgin Islands than there was in Virginia.
What kind of work was going on there?
Just generally, there were jobs.
Really?
Yeah.
So did you do some boating there as a kid then, or?
Actually, most of what I know about sailing and boats came from Russell.
Okay.
So
So that was a little bit later in life.
no, at that time.
Oh.
That's when
Yeah.
he first taught me about sailing.
Oh, okay. Because you guys have known each other since you were kids, you were saying earlier. Yeah. Okay. So from the Virgin Islands, where did you go?
Art school in North Carolina. Sort of a career attempt in Japan and Tokyo, and I was in Java for a year working with my mom as well, and then on a boat all over the world pretty much for 19 years.
Really?
Yeah, did charter hosting and refit and cruising, and
What kind of boat was that?
it was a William Garden Nereus design,
Okay.
big hulk of a steel boat.
Oh, a steel boat.
Yeah, motor sailor.
Oh, really?
So very different sailing than what's real sailing about. It was more like,
So did
traveling.
Garden design it as a steel boat?
I believe he did, yes.
Really interesting.
It was an older boat.
Yeah. And so how long have you been in Port Townsend?
Since 2009.
Wow, okay. 4 years here. This is a cool place. So how about you, Russell? Tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm from California originally, but I only lived there till I was 10 or 11, and then went cruising with my parents on a trimaran, and ended up in Virginia, which is where I met Ashlyn. She was only 12 when I met her, but
You guys didn't get married then, did you?
no,
No, it wasn't legal.
I waited a couple of years before I, got interested in her. Took a while.
He waited till I started looking like a girl, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I ended up in the Virgin Islands for a couple of years. I sailed down there in my first boat, and that's when I really got to know Ashlyn.
Mm-hmm.
And then lived in the East Coast for another decade, I guess, sort of building boats and trying to go north in the summertime and come south in the wintertime, and anywhere from Maine to Florida. And then I moved to Port Townsend.
So you said you were building boats at that time?
Yeah.
So how did you learn how to build boats?
Well, my father is a boat designer and a boat builder, and so I've been around boat shops, since really before I can remember.
Okay.
And there was a lot of boat shop touring when I was a kid.
Really? On the East Coast?
No, mostly in California,
Oh, okay.
and then on the East Coast.
Yeah. So at that time, where were the major shops in California? Boatyards?
Oh, it was all backyard boat shops.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was, at that time, there was a huge movement for the, do it yourself, build your own boat and go to the South Pacific. And
Okay.
that's the kind of boat building I was around the most. But, I grew up in Santa Cruz, or near Santa Cruz, and that was kind of a hotbed of boat development in the 60s and 70s. So I got to be around people like Bill Lee and George Olson, and I started racing dinghies back then, and they all raced in the same class, so I got to know those guys a little
Really?
bit.
So you've been sailing around boats since you were a kid, it sounds like. Yeah. So you learned to sail at a young age too then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have your own boat as a kid, or
Well,
take out
no.
your family's boat by yourself or anything like that?
My dad had a dinghy that he still has, actually, a Jester dinghy, which is kind of a classic Santa Cruz design, and it was a racing sailing dinghy, and only 8 feet long. But I was in that thing, I think, when I was 6 years old, and then they couldn't get me out of it. I was
really?
Just always in it. Yeah.
What, is that a little sloop or?
Yeah, it's a little cat rig.
Oh, okay.
Rig,
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you grew up in California, then you were in then you were in Virginia, and then the Virgin Islands, and then when did you make your way up to the Northwest?
Oh, in 1989, I came out here. I had a boat that I was going to trailer out here. I wanted to do a South Pacific trip, and I was going to trailer the boat out here. I bought a trailer and was getting set up to do it, and realized that to be road legal, I would have had to cut one end of the boat off.
Oh, really?
And these guys that had been sailing with me a lot were so horrified by that they just bought the boat from me. They offered me a great price for it, and so I ended up selling the boat and selling the trailer and coming out here with a pocket full of money instead of a boat.
Really? Was that a boat you had built?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, I had to build a new boat, which was another, the money was all gone by the time I was halfway through the new boat. And,
Oh, really?
3 or 4 years went by. And actually, that boat got launched right here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back before any of this stuff was here. There was a giant pile of logs right here. And a big crowd came, and we just carried the boat over the logs and into the water.
Nice. What kind of boat was that one?
It's a proa.
Okay.
It's a very unusual multi-hull. It's the third multi-hull type.
Yeah.
This is catamarans and trimarans and proas.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So proas and shunting and all that stuff,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay. So you came here in '89. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then did you build boats you did custom work for other people, or?
Yeah, I did. At that time, I was just doing whatever I could find. I was doing a bit of work in my own shop, but mostly working outside my shop. And my whole focus then was to go cruising. And so I think by the time I really went cruising, I was building foils for racing boats, and that's what really gave me my cruising kitty. Gave me enough money to get out of Dodge for a while.
Mm-hmm. Were those wood composite foils, or?
No, they were female molded in CNC molds, carbon and foam, and actually some wood in there too. The shear webs were vertical grain fir.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
And I built foils for the International 14 fleet, which is a development class, and so the shapes were changing. Every year or two, the designs would change, and I'd be getting new molds made and
I see.
new laminate schedules. And,
Yeah.
I built enough International 14 foils to probably fill a semi truck.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I couldn't build another one if somebody paid me 10 times that amount. I'm just
You got a little burned out
I
on
got
that
a
one?
little burned out on it. Yeah.
So, Ashlyn, you met Russell when you were pretty young, about 12. So when did you guys hook up and get married and all that? That happened later in life?
Yeah, I guess I had kind of one of those midlife crises with health and everything else, and I had the opportunity to see Russell, and it just clicked. This is what I should have been doing all along,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah. So
It's a really long story. You're
Really?
not going to even begin to
We've only got a
scratch the
couple
surface
hours
here.
left on this tape, so we'll probably have to do that another time.
Yeah.
So when did you guys get married?
In 2010.
2010. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that probably, we would have been just fine not actually officially getting married or anything, but my sister was pretty
Yeah.
insistent that
Oh, really?
we
Okay.
tied
Her
knot.
sister basically drug us to the courthouse.
Oh, really made you get married, huh? Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah. So when did you come to Port Townsend then?
Then in 2009, yeah.
in 2009,
and Russell
yeah.
and I saw each other in 2008 in California.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I moved up in 2009.
So that's the year you started PT Watercraft?
Yes.
Is that right? So tell me about that, how you came to the decision to start a business like that.
Well, I was kind of underway on it before Ashlyn got here, although I would have failed miserably without Ashlyn's involvement. My friends Paul Beaker and Eric Jolly are boat designers in Seattle, and Beaker Boats, and we've worked together on different boat projects for a long time, and they wanted to design a very fuel efficient outboard runabout, and so I basically took it on to develop it as a kit, and we built the first one at the Wooden Boat School in Hadlock, and basically built it as a way to write the manual. And so I taught a class in how to build it, and we built one.
Where did you teach a class at?
At the Northwest School of Wooden
Oh, you
Boat
did?
Building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that we needed to build another one to write the manual, and Ashlyn was here by then. We had to do some design changes, and so it wasn't really, nothing got underway until after Ashlyn got here, and it's taken quite a while to get going. We've got 3 boats going now, but each one of them has taken more than a year of development. The nesting dinghy, it took 4 prototypes before we had the final cut file for all the CNC stuff and the right photographs for the manual. The manuals have been about a year project each one.
Really? Yeah.
They're
Step-by-step building manual.
yeah, they're largely photographic. You try to tell as much as you can with photographs, and that's why the photographs are so important. And if you miss one, you are really in trouble. So it's been a very steep learning curve. And I've never written anything in my life before writing the PT Skiff manual, and it's been a really big surprise to me that people think it's the best boat building manual they've ever seen.
Wow.
I basically thought I was a total hack at anything to do with writing, but the technical stuff comes kind of naturally to me, I guess. But it doesn't mean that I can do it quickly. I find when I first wake up in the morning, if I work on a manual for an hour, then at the end of that hour, I'm no longer productive. It's not working. So
It's got to be first thing in the morning, right?
yeah. Well, sometimes I take the laptop to the shop with me. If I have to catch up before I can continue on with the boat, I'll take it to the shop, for a week straight and work for half the day on the manual and then the other half the day on the boat. And I've had to do that quite a bit as well.
Do you guys do all your own photography for the manuals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of camera are you using? I'm just curious.
We've just had a little Sony cyber shot,
Really? Okay.
and now we just bought a new camera finally, because that
Yeah,
one
the
was
point and
giving
shoot
up.
is actually pretty. We've had a good point and shoot, but it's pretty good for that kind of photography because you're trying to get in really close very often. And
And you can only print so high resolution anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you have a picture film the whole page.
Yeah, we're not blowing things up very large, but I mean, for a 8.5 by 11 format, that you can. It's plenty
Do pretty
good quality.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quality's fine.
Yeah.
But the first cameras had a little bit too much dust and.
yeah, epoxy.
Oh,
You're
really?
always
Finally
grabbing
giving
the
up.
camera.
You got
You know.
epoxy on your hands.
Well,
yeah.
you try to be clean, but sometimes you just can't keep your hands completely clean.
Yeah. I try to change gloves really often. At first, I was trying to conserve my gloves, and I'm like, this is really stupid. I'm causing myself sanding, and I'm getting epoxy everywhere.
Yeah.
Save 10 cents on gloves. So, Ashlyn, what's your part in the business then?
I've created the website. I answer emails and phone calls. Anything in the promotional department, and I also do the bookkeeping. It's the graphic design stuff is a lot of fun for me, but generally running a business is not my first talent. So it's been a big learning curve for me to actually learn how to run a business and to learn all the rules and
Yeah.
follow them. And so every year I get a little bit better at it, and a little bit less intimidated. But that's been a big challenge for me.
Yeah.
I think both of us are much more creative people than business people. So it's, but we're not in a position to hire someone to run it for us. So we have to do it ourselves.
There's a huge amount of customer service in a business like this, and I'm not very good at it, and Ashlyn is very good at that. So I'm sure that if she left it up to me to talk to clients, we would not sell any kits to anybody.
You'd be like, call me later, okay? I'm busy right now.
Something like that.
I'd rather work on the boat.
I'd point out all the negative parts, and
Yeah.
We still try to tell it like it is, though.
Yeah.
we're
definitely not doing infomercials with anybody. Russell will tell people, we like to make sure that whoever's going to buy a boat, that this is the boat that will serve their purpose.
Yeah.
And boats are just fraught with compromise. Every boat has got its whole array of compromises and positives and negatives.
Yeah, that's true.
You should really understand all those before you jump into something.
Yeah, right. So tell me about the boats that you offer for sale through your business, which is called PT Watercraft, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me about the boats you guys offer and the kits.
Well, the Skiff was the first one, and it's an extremely fuel-efficient runabout, center console runabout. And it's plywood and epoxy, very, very lightly built. It goes with 20 horsepower, it goes almost 22 knots. With 25 horsepower, it goes 25 knots. And it's got a very interesting hull shape, it's multi-chine. There's eight panels and 8 hull panels, and it's fairly tender, mostly because it's so light. And it has a water ballast system that's built kind of in under the console.
Oh, it does. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's totally automatic. Unless you want to keep the ballast in or keep it out, which you do with an air valve. There's an air vent that vents the tank, and there's small scoops underneath the boat that suck the water out or let it fill if the boat stopped. But you can control that with the air valve.
Really? Has anybody done that on a SCAMP?
I don't think it would work on a SCAMP because of the speed difference.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're sailing versus motoring, so there's a difference there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I guess you could if you had big enough scoops. But it's a beaker idea.
Really? What a cool idea.
Yeah, very,
You just
very
turn an
cool.
air valve on and off, and that's your...
It's
That's
so
the
simple,
ballast
but it
tank
works
control.
really well.
How much ballast is that thing? How much water? How many pounds?
It's 32 gallons, I think. So it's
What is it?
300, around 300 pounds, a little over 300 pounds. I think it's 321 pounds or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yes, it must be more than
So
30 gallons.
is that tank distributed laterally across the
No,
boat?
it's
or is
fore
it-
and aft.
It's fore and
running
aft,
fore and aft.
towards the center of the boat, or around the center
it's
console.
around the center of the boat, yeah. And it's underneath there's like a grid of framing that runs fore and aft through that part of the boat, and so the tank's built into that.
So that must really add stability to that boat.
Yeah, it does. And if the going gets rough, say you're going upwind and big chop and things are getting a little out of control, you just stop and let the tank fill and then hit the throttle and away you go.
I see. Yeah. Was that kind of a shallow V boat?
No, it's you'd think of it more as a deeper V.
A deep V, yeah.
It's quite fine forward, and then kind of a moderate V aft, but it's a rounded V because it's multiple chines.
Mm-hmm.
And the advantages are fuel efficiency. The boat really only needs 20 horsepower.
Yeah.
And it's 18 and a half feet
18
long.
and a half feet
so
long.
it's
What's the beam on it?
6 feet.
And how
yeah.
much draft is it?
15 inches or something
No,
like
it's
that?
not that much. No. I would depend on how many
12 inches
people
or
are in
something,
it. It's
yeah.
what a skiff
It's real-
usually is, maybe
yeah.
a little bit more than
Right.
usual.
Wow.
And the real differences between our skiff and your normal planing runabout is that it's fairly narrow and it's quite light, and the hull shape actually. Most planing boats have straight buttock lines, so from the fattest point of the boat aft are straight lines, and that's the way it should be for boats that are just purely planing and always in flatter water.
Mm-hmm.
This boat, the transom is smaller basically than the midsection. The boat it comes back together like a sailboat would in a moderate way, and that lets the boat operate at less than planing speeds very efficiently. So, if you're going at 1/3 throttle, you're operating very efficiently. It's not like a planing boat where you've got to give it a lot of gas to get it up on the plane, and then you can back off a little bit. This boat, it doesn't really matter what speed you're going. It's going through the water nicely.
Wow, I like that. But it is noticeable when it gets up on a plane, though.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not having to work a lot harder to get on plane.
It doesn't have a transition period. It's not like you're.
Oh, really?
It's not like you're bow up, getting up to a plane, and then you're planing. You're just
It's a
going
smooth
slow, medium, or fast.
I
it
see.
Just
Interesting.
goes and
Yeah.
kind of raises up as it goes, but there's not that.
At full throttle, the
Hill.
bow is as high, is high, just because of the shape of the back end of the boat. It rides quite bow high, but it's very, very comfortable in rough water for a lightweight planing boat. It's incredibly comfortable. Like, we've driven really fast through some pretty serious stuff, and we've got videos on our website that show.
Oh, really?
Some of that, yeah.
Fun. So now you sell that boat as a kit and as a finished boat, or
No,
just as a kit?
We don't sell any finished boats.
Okay. So you sold it as a kit,
Yeah.
which is basically all the plywood parts and epoxy and fiberglass cloths and all that, or?
Yeah, it's the it's everything but the epoxy.
Okay.
There's 3 different weights of fiberglass cloth that come with the kit, and all the
And the skiff fiberglass is separate.
oh, the fiberglass is separate. Oh,
Fiberglass is separate on the skiff.
see, this
Take
is
note.
why I asked.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
In the nesting dinghy, the fiberglass comes with the kit.
Okay.
And-
so that's it. Your 18.5-foot skiff, and then you've got a nesting dinghy also. So tell me
Yeah.
about that one.
Well, the nesting dinghy is really was my intention in the beginning, was to develop a line of nesting dinghies, and that was something that's been in my mind for many years, because I've always had nesting dinghies, and I've I've built a lot of different prototypes and goofed around with them a lot. I've broken them in half in the surf. I have a pretty good handle on the structural issues with the nesting dinghy. And I had a nesting dinghy on my Pacific trip that a lot of people were interested in. And I also really got to see what a big issue dinghies are for cruisers. Everybody's got inflatables now pretty much. There's a handful of people that still have hard dinghies, but most people have inflatables, and they're really great when they're great, and they're really terrible when they're terrible. And they're always getting ripped off.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah, they either take the motor or they take the whole boat.
Oh, really?
It's just like
That could ruin your sailing trip.
Yeah.
10,000 inflatables stolen, huh?
And there's a lot of other things about them as well. When they're fully planing, that's a true planing boat where you're either idling along or you're whizzing along on the surface.
Yeah.
There's no in between. And you have to have a lot of horsepower to make them plane. If you're a typical cruiser, you have at least 10 horsepower. Most people have 15, and that's well over 100 pounds of motor that you have to hoist off and on your boat every time you use it. And then if you're not planing, say you're running you have a boatload of jerry jugs or something. If you're not planing and it's windy, you get soaking wet in an inflatable. Water just wraps right around the tubes, and you just get hosed. So everybody's taking their foul weather gear to shore with them.
And they're
Let's go have
impossible to
dinner.
row.
Put on your gear.
Yeah, and you can't row them. I find the whole premise of inflatables being safe to be a little bit false, because it's safe if your motor is. If you trust your motor, it's like a single engine airplane, Once the motor dies, you're toast. And if the wind's blowing offshore and you're out in the anchorage somewhere in the middle of the night and you just fouled your prop or whatever happens, your chances of rowing to your boat are pretty slim.
Really interesting.
Well, I've
Yeah.
seen them flip over in a headwind. Somebody trying to row ashore in Gibraltar, and just the wind caught the bow and he was upside down.
My goodness.
Instantly.
But I mean, we're never going to make a dent in the inflatable dinghy sales.
Yeah.
But there's always been a lot of interest in nesting dinghies, and I've never seen a really decent one, or at least what I thought was a really decent one. So it's kind of seemed like a natural thing to attempt, was to try to come up with a really good nesting dinghy, specifically targeted at cruising boats.
Okay. So you designed this boat yourself?
Yeah. I designed one when was that one? Like
2007?
Yeah, 2007. I designed one that Paul Beaker helped me with a little bit, and it was a prototype to test this joining method for joining the two halves, and it was also to test the idea of assembling the boat in the water, which is something that people that talk about nesting dinghies talk about, being able to assemble it in the water as being a great thing. And I thought it was kind of a silly idea until I tried it, and it's actually fantastic. It's easier than putting it together on land, at least with our boat. And both ways with our boat is really easy. We'll show you. We've got the boat right here, but it's...
Yeah, I remember I took a video of you at Bainbridge.
Oh, yeah. Taking it apart.
Yeah.
Right, in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this... Anyway, that first prototype was to sort of test some ideas I had for joining the two halves, and it worked really well, and sold that boat for quite a lot of money, and that also helped, led me to think I had something that I should keep working on. And then a bunch more years passed before I got back onto this, but And then it's taken many prototypes of this boat to come up with something that was ready to market. But we're actually pretty proud of the boat. We're pretty excited about it, and we've sold a surprising number of kits.
Have you?
And
cool.
we've had very few problems with the kits or with the boats. People have, I mean, knock on wood, but everything's been working. The hardware and all the parts fit, and the manual works well enough that we don't, our phone is not ringing all the time with people wanting to know how come part A doesn't fit to part B, and I think of all the boats I've built and designed, this nesting dinghy is the only one that I don't have to squint to look at. I always see all the flaws in everything I do, but this boat it's came out pretty good.
Pretty cool, huh? And it's 11 feet long.
Yeah.
How much does it weigh?
90 pounds.
90 pounds. Cool. Very cool. And then you've got a third boat that you're selling also?
Yeah, we just have sold the first kits for a non-nesting version of the same boat.
I see.
It has different interior geometry, and it ended up being a whole new manual. A lot of things are different. There's a few things that are the same, but a lot of things are different. So we had to write a new manual for that, and it's called the Spear. My friend Alex Spear built the first prototype of that boat, and that was actually last year. And so we named the boat after him. He's been a big supporter of our business. So
Cool.
And it's also got a kind of arrowhead-shaped foredeck, so it looks like a spear if you look at it.
Oh, really?
Top anyway.
Nice. Cool. So you're selling those 3 kits, and then you're also selling hatches for the SCAMP and a few other things?
Yeah, we have a few other products that have sort of kept us going over the lean years of the kit business. Our friend John Harris from Chesapeake Lightcraft sells these carbon fiber ice straps that we make. They're
really?
attachment points for people use them on high-end kayaks, and you can glue them on instead of having to put fasteners through. So for deck hardware and holding your life jacket down, people glue these little carbon ice straps on.
Really interesting.
We've sold many thousands of those, and then we had to develop these turn dogs for holding our hatches down on the PT Skiff and on the PT11, and so we basically came up with a design, and we have them machined by the CNC machine out of Delrin, and we have to do some handwork on those as well. We call them turn dogs, and Chesapeake Lightcraft sells those as well. They call them hatch toggles.
Now, are those the ones that are on the SCAMP boats?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, same ones.
Cool. Very cool.
And we've sold many, many thousands of those things.
Really?
Surprisingly, yeah.
And then the SCAMP hatches, there's 2 different sizes of watertight hatch kits that we do.
Are those selling well?
We have surprisingly well.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes in spurts. We haven't sold any for a couple of months, but oh my God, for a while there, it was just...
Every time they have SCAMP camp.
Yeah.
People go
Yeah.
wild with the hatches.
Yeah, it's been nice. I mean, we have Russell designed watertight hatches for all of our kits, and Howard Rice, who was promoting SCAMP quite a bit, he liked the idea, and so he and Josh Colvin approached us about hatches specific to SCAMP. So Russell put together sizes appropriate to the SCAMP.
Yeah. They used all those hatches on all the boats at the last camp, right? In March? Or most of them?
Yeah, different people bought different numbers of hatches.
Yeah.
So
Everybody decides
everybody's
what they
got their
want.
own idea.
So I've got a question about those. I'm building the SCAMP, as you know. I think you know. But the vertical hatches that go, to the forward.
Bulkhead.
Yeah, the bulkhead 4, bulkhead 3. Is there any way to hinge? Could you hinge those?
Yes, you can, and we haven't. We've been meaning to actually build a prototype of the hinged hatch, and haven't done it.
Because that would
But
really be handy.
I've done a mock-up of it.
Have you?
And
Okay.
the only my only concern was that there'd be a tendency to roll the gasket sideways on the edge of the hatch that's next to the hinge.
Yeah.
But in reality, it doesn't.
Oh.
So you'd use a piano hinge, the lightest piano hinge you could buy, and it would just be as long as the straight section of the
Yeah.
edge.
Okay. Cool.
And,
Cool.
Yeah, it would work.
Yeah. So, well, congratulations on getting your business launched. I guess it's been 3 or 4 years now, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Russell, we were going to talk just briefly about wood composite construction, and because that's kind of what you've done for a long time. So,
Well, I've also, I've always built boats out of plywood and epoxy and cold molded and strip planked, and I've done all that stuff. But I never realized how much I loved that kind of construction and how much I appreciated that kind of construction until I got into composites. And I got into composites because that's the kind of work that was available to me. And I worked for a year and a half for Core Builders, building America's Cup yachts. That was in 2005, I think. In Anacortes, we built two cup boats, and that was my biggest immersion into really modern composites. It was all pre-preg carbon and honeycomb and the latest things. And I basically have a really strong appreciation for the materials. You really can build incredibly light things that way, but they're really not that much lighter than wood epoxy, and the amount of effort to build them and the amount of waste and the expense is so much greater, and the longevity of composite structures is maybe not as good as wood epoxy. So I ended up kind of coming back around to looking at plywood and epoxy as kind of the ultimate boat building material, especially plywood. I mean, I like cold molding and strip planking is also really good, but I've been involved in some projects where we built some racing dinghies, sailing racing dinghies out of with cold molded underbodies and plywood topsides and plywood decks, and they were about the same size and volume as an International 14, and they ended up weighing roughly the same as a modern International 14, and they're built out of mostly pre-pregs and honeycomb or wet laminate and foam. They're very lightly built, and the modern composite International 14 is not very long lasting. They dent very easily. Using a core means you have to use quite a heavy skin on the outside or anywhere that you can dent it. And these wood epoxy dinghies we built are just tough as can be. If they're built right and cared for, they're going to be they're not as stiff, but they're going to be just as strong and light, if they're really carefully engineered and built. So I'm really not sure that this whole composites thing is all it's cracked up to be. And
so by composites, you mean artificial materials, no wood, basically? Is that what?
Yeah, foam and glass is composite. Foam and carbon, honeycomb and carbon.
Yeah.
And one thing that really struck me working for these guys on these America's Cup boats was the amount of garbage that was created. At times we had the largest dumpster I've ever seen, and at times we were filling that thing once a week. Or actually multiple times a week it was going, full of plastics, scraps, all the molds that would get cut up after they were used. And so building boats the modern way creates a lot of trash. It takes a lot of electricity.
Did you see the lights would dim every time they fire up the oven?
They had this huge oven well, they had multiple ovens to cook these parts, and they when they would cook a hull, for instance, we used to joke that the lights of Anacortes would dim when they'd flip the switch, because they were huge cables going to these ovens.
Really?
They would run all night long.
Interesting. So now, Ashlyn, you guys just released an ebook. So tell me a little bit about that and what it's about and how they can get it if they're interested.
Well, our manuals have a supplement epoxy book or section in the back of every manual, and several people kept saying, well, can't I just get the epoxy part? And so Russell took a second look at it and added some things and made it more of a standalone book as opposed to just referring to a few techniques that are in the rest of the manual, builder's manual. So it's about a 40-page ebook, and it's on the website. And I think it's $5.99.
$5.99
for it on the website, and it's all color photos, which is a nice part about ebooks. Our manuals are black and white because of printing costs. So I've already had some feedback from people saying how wonderful it is to have these big color photographs.
Yeah, and I've heard great things about the epoxy section of the boat building manual. I mean, if people say go buy the boat building manual so you can get that if you don't need, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You've come out with this ebook.
Yeah,
so.
now you don't have to buy the
Right.
whole. I mean, it doesn't cover all boat building techniques. It's something Russell's going to do in sections. He'll focus on different areas, and we'll have more of these ebooks. But this covers the basics of gluing,
Glassing, filleting, gloss coating, fill coating, peel ply.
Yeah, it covers all the
all
basics.
the different clamping techniques for gluing.
Cool.
And Russell's got some really good techniques. I've seen a lot of people struggling with their epoxy work on their projects around, and he's got some really nifty time-saving tricks.
Cool.
Headache-saving tricks. So. Yeah.
Well, they're all kind of universal methods.
Yeah.
It's just that so few people really, epoxy is not something that's been around long enough for it to be really a taught art. It's something that people are experimenting with in their garages, and that's one of the wonderful things about it is it's so creative. As a material, it's such a creative material, but you sort of have to get some of the basic processes down before you can start coming up with your own, better ways of doing things.
Right. So I'm just curious. I just did a bunch of fillets on my SCAMP, and what I found was if I mixed more than 8 ounces of epoxy with thickener, that it was heating up too fast on me. Of course, a lot of that depends on the air temperature, obviously. But
and the hardener you use, if you're doing a lot of filleting, you should use slow hardener.
And that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Is it the 206 or 207?
206.
206.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't have any trouble. You need to speed up, it sounds like.
Yeah. How many ounces do you mix at a time if you're doing a lot?
Oh, I mix.
Do you go big?
Sometimes I mix more than half a quart at a time. Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty often, but I'm really fast at it.
Yeah.
And the whole squeezy bag thing can really help speed things up, but there's a lot of tricks for going fast, getting the speed down, up.
Very cool. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. So if people are listening and are interested in your boats or your products, how would they get a hold of you? What's your contact info?
Our website is ptwatercraft.com. Business name is actually Port Townsend Watercraft. So Googling that or just looking at ptwatercraft.com. Our email is simply info@ptwatercraft.com. And our phone number is 360-385-2645.
Okay.
We like best, since it is just the two of us, we like best for people to try to check out the website first and see if they can find what they're looking for. And then if you don't can't find the information for some reason, because there's actually a lot of information on the website, so it does take a bit of adventurous spirit to find everything you're looking for. Then drop me an email or give us a call. Most of the time I'm in and out of office a lot, because it's not just office work we do. So
Yeah.
but
The
I
other
do try to
thing
call
we
people back.
The other thing we'd really like is feedback on this ebook, and because I'm planning to do more of that sort of thing, and we don't really know what kind of format it's going to be. If it'll be a lot of smaller ebooks. One book that I have in mind that I'd really love to do is a book on making composite hardware, making your own parts out of carbon and epoxy or fiberglass and epoxy. It's something I've done a lot of, tiller head fittings and winch bases and goosenecks and hinges, all kinds of things that you can make yourself without, tabernacles. You can make some pretty complex fittings that you would otherwise have to have welded or buy or have
Which
custom
can get
made.
really expensive, right?
Expensive and heavy. Even rudder gudgeons and pintles you can make.
Oh, really?
Composite.
Interesting. Yeah.
So anyway, I'd like feedback on the book that we have, and maybe some more ideas.
Very cool.
Something we'd like to do more of.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast today. Anything else you'd like to add at this point? Ashlyn, anything else?
I don't think so. I'm pretty shy about these.
Yeah, a little timid. How about you, Russell?
Use high quality plywood and epoxy. How's that?
Okay, very good. I like that.
Words of wisdom.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
All
David.
right, you
Bye-bye.
too.
Thanks, you guys, for doing the interview. It was really fun to sit on a picnic bench in front of the Maritime Center and do that recording during the Pocket Yacht Palooza in Port Townsend. Best of luck to you in your business. You guys do a great job, and that nesting dinghy is really awesome. You can connect with me by email, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. Subscribe to my newsletter by September 9th and get my ebook for free, hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. You can leave comments on my website, and you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. And if that isn't enough, you can leave a voice message for me by going to hookedonwoodenboats.com/voicemail and leave a message directly from your computer or your tablet or smartphone or whatever you're using. Again, a reminder that next week there will not be a podcast on September 5th, but I will resume on September 12th. Thanks for supporting me. If you make purchases from Amazon, Jamestown Distributors, or West Marine, I would appreciate if you go to my website and click on their banners before you make the purchase. That way I get credit for it and earn a small commission there. And if you like the podcast, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. I would really appreciate that. Well, keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Have a great week. Wooden Boat Dan over and out. God bless.